'Cause it's time to move on now. It's time for MurderMoose.
Woo!
Wee woo, wee woo, wee woo, wee woo.
Hello.
Hello. We are Murder Moose, and we are part of the Slash and Cast Podcast Network.
It's in the game.
It's in the game.
It's in my ass. Hi.
Ken's magical bag of holding, aka her ass.
That's your ass. I use your asshole as my magical bag of holding, okay? That's just, them's the rules.
I mean, the story I think I've mentioned on here before, but Ken, one day I was watching a stream and went off to like go to the bathroom or something and come back, and chat is talking about how many raccoons they could fit in my asshole, and yep.
And now our continuous discussion is the size of Rod's giant cock and how many things we can shove in his asshole. It's a very productive day over at my place.
It is. It is a very like, if you want to solve the mysteries of life and world hunger, Kinstream is the place to be.
That's right.
You get all the important information, like how many raccoons could fit in Rod's asshole and how big his dong is or something.
Yes. Get it right. Get it tight.
Ken, how are you? You're a very busy lady. I know you're going on adventures, and Weasel has returned, as we see.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's been since I was gone, since the last one. Yeah, we drove. We did 7 hours one day, and then like 8 hours the next, and went and met up with my parents and spent a couple days with them, and got Weasel and Stripes. And then did the full drive back. I got detained at the border briefly. It was like
Ken went into the border and went, what are the worst answers I could have for these questions? Okay, there, I'm going to answer them that way.
I actually, like, my thought was, I don't want to lie. I don't want to do anything that like they could catch me in, whatever. So when he started asking, like, so anyway, like anytime I fly, I've never been stopped, like ever. Half the time they just wave me through. They don't give a shit. But I drove in. When I left Canada for the States, it was a breeze. But when I came back, I had a whole lot of stuff in the truck, and I had my cats. And because we have to, announce or proclaim or whatever that you have animals, they were like, oh, so then I got pulled in because they're like, well, we don't know if you're actually going to leave. And I was like, well, I'm not going to just stay. Like, I know the law is 6 months. And they were like, okay. So we had to go through like an entire background, every place I've ever lived, like all this stuff. And then we had to go through all of my financial statements, my credit cards, my savings, like all of it, to ensure that I had enough money to support myself if I needed to, and to get the fuck out if I needed to. And he was like by the time it was all said and done, we were there for like an hour and a half, something like that. And he was like, okay, normally, well, because of what I do for work, because I live stream and everything, he was like, okay, well, that's okay as long as you're working for a US company. If you do anything for a Canadian company, then that's a big no-no. And I was like, how the fuck do I know what companies are like? Who gives a fuck? Like, go on. But so we went back and forth. But then finally he was like, okay, technically you can stay for 6 months, but I'm going to recommend you only stay for 3. And I'm going to give you this paper, and you're going to take this paper whenever you fly back or however you go back, and present it at the border so that they can be like, oh, you did what you were asked and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, fine. So the rule is 6 months. He told me 3 months. I will leave in 2.5 because I'm a scared little bitch and I don't want to potentially get into trouble. And then I'll just come back.
So what are the cats doing when you do that? Are they just going to hang out there?
They're just going to hang out here. I'll only be gone for like a week or two. And then.
Well, I think it's funny. I think it's funny that like just crossing the border resets it. It's like you're playing tag and there's like a home base where you like you touch it and you're safe. They're like, you know what's funny though? And as you describe this story, I just go, yeah. They think if you fly in, you definitely have enough money to get out. If you drive in, on the other hand, you might be complete white trash. And they're like,
it's just so funny because I was like, dude, why? What? Like, I mean, I get it, right? Like, I totally get it, but
I think Canada's a little too like presumptuous about how good Canada. I mean, Canada's a fine place. Don't get me wrong, but they're acting like it's like tropical, magical big titty land where like everyone walks around and like you like smoking joints and like titties are hanging out of like off of like Canadian Mounties or something. It just seems like it's very much like a very high thought process in themselves. And I understand, but like if you don't know, like Canada's really weird, like as Ken's describing, like if you have like any kind of like record, they won't let you into Canada. Like like I've heard stories about wrestlers like, you know, who do indie stuff and stuff like that, who like try to go into Canada for like a wrestling show and they're like, no, you're not allowed in because you got like a misdemeanor in 1999 and now you can't come into Canada ever again. Like, so it's very weird and like it's just it makes me laugh. So, well, I'm glad you're safe.
I like it here. So
I'm not. Oh, I'm not.
No, I get it. It's wild.
It's more mocking the fact that they're like Canada's a pretty relatively small place and like, and it's like, I don't know. You just see immigration in the U.S. and how Kim also. You've spent your entire life in Republican states in the United States, so it's like the shittier half of that whole process is just like, oh, you mean like places that don't want women's anatomy? Also, like, I don't know if you heard about this shit, and it just reminded me of saying that Arizona just like their Supreme Court just enacted a fucking abortion, like a total abortion ban from like that I guess was set up in like 1860 something, and I'm just like, they had a what?
They're trying to say that birth control is abortion now. So there's certain states that are really pushing to pull birth control completely.
Yep. Cause I ate it here.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's get on happier topics. Can also besides your adventuring back and forth and like getting like running from the law, what have you been up to?
I've been building a desk. It's been pretty cool. I went and worked on it today for a few hours. It is a 63 by 30 beautiful desk that's going to be built. It's being built out of like framing wood, but I'm going to do all this really cool like epoxy stuff on the top, and I'm going to like embed some Legos. And yeah, so we worked on it today, and we're going to stain it. I think Thursday we're going to try to finish it because we've got to get 2 more legs on. We've got to square out the legs and then build out the shelving under it and then stain it. So.
Nice. Yeah, you were showing like what was inspiring you on your stream today, and it was like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, so it's going to be huge, which is good.
Yeah. I mean, just more room for Weasel to fuck shit up on.
Well, that's partially why I need it, because there's no space. And I mean, this is what we've resorted to.
Weasel, if you're not watching a video, Ken is sitting on a chair that's like hitting a wall, and Weasel is like on the top of the chair, like showing everyone how much of a true goddess she is, and how
and then Stripes is in a snoodle bowl.
Yep. As a podcast usual for us, wherever Ken is. So yeah. You've been
I'm so
watching
glad
it.
to have them though.
Yeah. What were they like? Was Weasel a little shit with your parents, or was Weasel just like her usual terror self, or what?
They were basically okay. They bullied my parents' cat a lot, both of them.
Yeah.
And then when we got them here, because there's 2 cats that live in this house, they're both big cats. Like they're like between 17 and 20 pounds.
Yeah.
So Stripes is 27 pounds now. Weasel's 9 pounds, like between 6 and 9 pounds. So Weasel, though, thinks that she's in charge. And we're having a lot of issues with that because she's trying to square up to these big cats. Stripes got put in his place really fast. There was no aggression. There was no like fights. But all it took was the one cat to stand up really tall in front of him, and Stripes is coward. And I was like, dude, because Stripes will beat the fuck out of anybody. So I was shocked. Like I fully anticipated fights. Stripes just hangs out now. He sits in the closet, or he sits in his noodle bed, or he sits in my lap. He does not want anything to do with anybody. So now they'll fight. They play fight all the time. Yeah. But
Stripes is like a sumo wrestler in a cat's body.
He really is. He's my old fat man. That's all it is. He's my old fat man, and she's my sassy 30-something.
You should just call her Mimi from now on, since he was Psycho.
Yes. She's Mimi.
Have you been watching anything else?
I started watching Food Wars a little bit.
What is Food Wars?
It's an anime. Which I know I'm slipping a little bit here, but I mean, it's interesting. I still don't like all the anime tropes and stuff, but I like seeing the food recipes that they do. So that's like the only reason I'm like, man, can I cook that?
That's like, dude, playing all the Yakuza games as I'm 90 something hours into Infinite Wealth now. And like you heal with food, and like they have like takoyaki and stuff like that, and I'm just like, it just makes me hungry playing them. And I'm always like, I'm real bad like at going and getting myself sushi. Like I haven't had sushi since I was in fucking Nevada, which was in like October, and so like it's been a long time. And I'm like, I love sushi, but I'm real bad at taking myself out to do shit like that, because I'm like, I don't know. It's that weird like thing where being broke a lot of my life, I've been like spending money on food is just like going out to eat thing is kind of like a thing I don't do very often. But yeah, so, but that game makes me hungry. So I get it. I know what you mean. I went and saw Monkey Man, which is like, I described it as Indian John Wick, and very much like kind of got those vibes, but it's not as much action as John Wick, but it does hit points where it does, but like as a whole, it's more of like a very much like a like revenge story, but I liked it a lot, and I thought Monkey Man was really good, so you should see it if you get a chance. But that movie is awesome.
That Josh guy that I follow on TikTok that does like movie reviews and like announces when stuff is going free to watch on platforms. He said he like pulled up. He's like, I'm so mad. I just went and saw Monkey Man, and I am beyond pissed off that I'm not going to get to watch that movie every single day for the rest of my life. And I was like, oh, you got me there for a second, buddy.
It's real good. I just like it gets real violent. And there's a lot of things in it that are very weird, but like I do dig the movie a lot. The guy from The Green Knight is in it, which I still have never seen. And he directed and wrote it, so like that is like his like passion project kind of thing. So, but you should see it if you get a chance. It was either that or The First Omen, and The First Omen I've heard good things about. People are saying good things about it. Like horror people are saying good things about it. And I don't know what your experience with the Omen movies is, Ken, but
very minimal.
I like the only one I've ever seen is the first one, and I like the first one a lot. Like the first one has like some very iconic things, including the lady going, "This is all for you, Damien," and just like jumping out the window and hanging herself at the front of the big old house and shit like that, and the window pane decapitation and stuff like that. It's got some iconic stuff. It's not a very it's a series that seems to have gone downhill very quickly after that, but that's okay. That is okay. And yes, we talked about it last week, but Ken finally watched Psycho Gorman, and so I was like, we need to go and do something else that is the same. I think it's the same director or the same like creative staff, but previous to Psycho Gorman, and that is how we ended up with the Void. So we are here to talk about the Void. Unless there's anything else you want to talk about before we go into the Void, Miss Kin.
What are you going to see any shows soon?
No, dude, my concerts coming through this thing that I've been actually interested in are not that like much. I might go say Knocked Loose and if the tickets aren't too insane because they've been on sale for a while, but like Knocked Loose is a very much like Knocked Loose is, from what I hear, you go to see Knocked Loose and like their pits are like violent as all shit because they're very like hardcore kind of like weird like yeah, a lot of stuff, but like I might go see them. But besides that, I don't like all the shows that Red Rocks have that I've really been interested in have disappeared tickets really quickly. But I may go see High Lung also. But I don't know. And yeah.
Well, that'll be good.
I've seen High Lung. I went and saw High Lung with Zeke and Katie a couple years ago. 2022, 21. I don't know. It was a while ago, but so.
Can't believe that was a couple years ago. That's wild.
Yeah, dude, it's funny because it's like all my like my subs like so COVID really started a whole new like I stopped playing Hearthstone and then I went out into like variety Twitch for the first time during COVID and I started out with hanging out with Katie, Classy Katie, and then like Zeke after that, and like I think my streak with my sub count with Katie just hit 4 years this month, and it's just like
nice.
Holy shit! It's just like time. You're just like time is a flat circle, and so yeah, it's been like I'm just like man, life is crazy. It really, really, truly is because it doesn't seem like 4 years. It's that thing, man. And you can confirm this, Ken, but like. You know when you're little and you're like waiting for Christmas and like Christmas seems like it's like when it's like a week away, a week seems like a year and a half of like it's like the longest wait you ever for Christmas and stuff like that. And now it's like as I'm 40, a week is just like oh, it's like a week. Like fuck, that's like not enough time to do things. It's like it just doesn't seem like enough time, and so it's all relative, but life is crazy like that, right? So life be crazy. Okay, Ken. Let's dive into the film of the week, The Void from 2018, right? I think was I saw. Can you read the IMDb synopsis for this film?
I would be honored. When Sheriff Deputy Carter discovers a blood-soaked man limping down a deserted road, he rushes him to a local hospital with bare-bones night shift staff. As cloaked cult-like figures surround the building, the patients and staff inside start to turn ravenously insane. Trying to protect the survivors, Carter leads them into the depths of the hospital, where they discover a gateway to immense evil. Dun,
Yes.
dun,
Dun, dun, dun. I mean, first off, I want to say something that isn't really relative to the plot or anything like that. If you've ever watched Letterkenny, the guy that he picks up on the side of the road is the one of the druggies from Letterkenny, and I'm like, oh, and then they typecast this guy gets typecast as a drug addict in everything he does because what's his name, Ronald or something like that.
His name is Evan
Roland.
Stern.
Roland is his name on Letterkenny. I was trying to think of his Letterkenny name.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
He's the like kind of super gay like greaser guy on that, and he gets like he is a drug addict in this, and you're just like, oh, okay, this guy just gets cast as a drug addict in everything he does. I'm like, I don't get it. He's good at it, but he's like, yeah, I don't get it. Ken, okay, so this is your first viewing of this movie. What was your like it? What was your initial thought with this? Because I know you had started it yesterday, and then we really haven't talked about it. But like, what was your initial like watch of this? Like, what was your like experience of The Void?
So I went through I know that we've talked about in the past, like going and reading reviews and people's opinions after the fact, and I know Josh hates it. But I like to do it to like see if I'm like relatively justified. I felt the pacing for this, while I understood that it was supposed to be atmospheric, it's Lovecraftian, that's how that rolls. It felt so slow. Like the pacing was miserable. It wasn't building anything. It wasn't like the pacing was, building up to this particular moment. I mean, yeah, the end was phenomenal, but it was so slow. Had I not been walking on the treadmill when I finished it today, I may have fallen asleep. But I'm also always tired. Um, but I found the end of it to be great. I wish that there would have been a little bit more commentary or somehow some kind of more development of that throughout. Like it felt very rushed in certain segments. It was like everything that was good was rushed, and then everything else was just
I
slow.
I think a lot of that, and this is like two things I wonder. One, I think budget was probably it. Like this was not a big budget movie. I mean, the same guys who made Psycho Gorman, like 3 years, 2 years, it was 3 years later, whatever it was. And like then the second part of that is I wonder if this abandoned hospital that they shot in, that was obviously abandoned, like because they had that plot thing of like was like there had been a fire and like this place is being abandoned. You know what it actually kind of reminded me of now that we're talking about like the Last Shift movie that we did the remake of, like that whatever movie, like where it was the police station was like going out, but that's what it kind of reminded me with that. I do have to ask then, were you finding people that agreed with you, or were you just like...
A lot of people agreed with me.
Okay.
A lot, like when I was flipping through, some people said that, oh no, the pacing was great. Like it was great because it built the tension. It didn't feel like it built any tension to me. I don't
Yeah.
know if because I was walking while I was watching it, if that was part of it. Like maybe I should have sat in the dark and watched it alone at night. But like, yeah, there were some incredible parts of it. One of the things that I did see that was really interesting is that all of the gore, all of the graphics, like everything was done not CGI. So I
Yeah.
thought that was really cool. And it definitely played a part, especially in the basement scene and like all the different gore and whatnot. Like it was really well done. The guy that's like smashing his head into the pipe over and over.
Yeah.
That was fabulous. It was really well done. There was so much of just stumbling around in the dark, not a lot of description as far as like, it was just, there were things that were so left unread. And when I was looking up everything, I don't want to say researching because I feel like research gets thrown around a lot. When I was looking up other people's input on it, some people were talking about, oh, well, that's the whole point with Lovecraft stories. Like you want to leave people completely in the dark, like, let them form their own assumptions. But then other people were like, yeah, but there's, something to it. And I don't want it spoon fed, but it was also very just slow. I think that if I went back and watched it again, I'd probably appreciate it more.
So I was gonna say I liked it the first time I saw it, and I don't remember like having these kind of issues, but like I feel like going into it, this is my second time watching it because I had seen it previously. I felt like this movie does a really, really good job of building all these things like you're talking about. I think that like part of the thing is that there's a lot of like mystery going into this. Like it's one of those things where they don't explain a lot of shit like you're talking about. Like you don't get... I think one of the things I kind of laughed at about this time was the doctor, who is kind of like the bad guy in the film. Because it's like he does all this shit that like they never explain any of it and how he does any of it. Like the nurse, which is the cops. I don't know. They sounded like they were married, but not like separated or something because they lost their daughter. Like she died during birth or something like that. He takes her, and like 5 minutes later, she's like spawning the son of Cthulhu through like this weird like pregnancy thing.
I wanted to ask you about that. because I may have just like misheard something or misinterpreted something. Was he actually seeing her doing that, or was she was she actually doing that, or was that just a vision?
No, she was actually like, so that's like why that last shot of the movie is a little strange to me and like doesn't like so at the very end of the movie he pulls the doctor who's become like, it kind of reminded me of Psycho Gorman, to be honest, like what the doctor looked like at the end, through the triangle into the other dimension. But like what was weird about it is that like the last shot of the movie is the cop standing there with his wife, who he had chopped her head off like 15 minutes before because she had been like put into like the doctor did all this shit in this movie because his daughter died. They don't explain what happened to her or whatever, but it's that thing where like it's a completely like legitimate like real world thing where people like they lose their kids and then just lose their fucking shit, right? And this doctor loses his daughter and then just what it sounds like is starts going and researching all this shit like Cthulhu, Lovecraftian shit. Also, by the way, this is a reminder, H.P. Lovecraft was not a nice person who had a cat named the N-word. And yeah. But this isn't actually, what's funny is like I feel like going in and rewatching this, I felt it was more like Lovecraftian than it kind of actually. It's this weird like it kind of has this real like Hellraiser feeling, a lot of it, but like it's like if Lovecraft and Hellraiser fucked kind of thing, because like a lot of the creatures more just kind of feel like zombies kind of thing, like especially in the basement sequence. But the practical effects, like you're talking about, are real good because they're fucking practical. Like the scene where Roland, and I know his name is Roland, it's his Letterkenny name. Like they find him and he's like fucking like chained to the bed, and the nurse is just like going and just like coming up, and it's just like the massive thing, and then the same monster when they're fighting it later on, and it's just like the two guys are like chopping parts off and like fucking it up and stuff like that. It's why I think, and I understand like you're pacing things because the movie is, I don't think it's badly paced. I think it's oddly, it's like when I was watching it this time, I actually, because I watched it last night, I'm like, this movie is creepy. I was creeped out because I wasn't like all that shit you're talking about wasn't like as much of a thought process, because I think that like when the first time you watch a movie like this and you're going through and you're not quite sure what's happening, right? Like this movie is very like, it's very atmospheric. Would you agree? Like it's very like,
yes,
it like between like the KKK like Cthulhu cult and then like all the other stuff, it's very much like they don't explain stuff. They just kind of go, we're gonna give you these cool images, like the white cloak in the hoods and stuff with that the black triangle on them. It's a real stunning image. It's a real stunning image, and those things are creepy, and it does a lot. But like a lot of the real like details and stories that this movie doesn't go into, like they open up this movie with the Roland guy escaping, and like the older like hillbilly kind of redneck guy and the younger kid coming out of this house, and you're like, why, you don't know what's happening, and they set the woman on fire, which is you're just like, what the fuck is happening? And it sets up the whole movie, because then the sheriff picks up the Roland guy and like takes him to the hospital, and then the whole plot goes off. But it's like, it's very much like, what is happening? And I could see like you, especially, you're just like, because it's very much like, it's a weird combination of atmospheric storytelling with like there is a story, and they try. It's like it's like they couldn't decide which one they wanted to do, right? Like it's like we're gonna show you a lot and kind of let you live in this world and kind of give you details, but not really, just kind of let you. But then they're like, oh yeah, but we're gonna kind of give you like these important things, like with the doctor and like the whole explanation that of the house that they show at the very beginning, where like it was a sex house and that the like Roland guy got like pulled in by the chick that got caught on fire, and they're like oh yeah, she promised me meth. Like that was his whole purpose, which that
Yeah.
was what was making me laugh, and why I keep calling him Roland, because he's Roland on Letterkenny and a complete druggie who does all this druggy stuff. Like, but I get what you mean. It's like that. I think that because it's not exceptional at the storytelling, like there's a story and it's not bad, but it's not like great. And what you're talking about, like you were probably trying to pick up the story and do all this stuff, and it's just like it's almost like it's kind of like a Lucio Fulci movie from like the 80s or the 70s, where it's very much like where they're just showing you like a lot of cool imagery and like kind of creepy vibes, and the story might not make great sense. It's kind of what I'm thinking after rewatching it. And I think that when you're not like completely thinking about it again, like I wasn't this time because I'd already seen it, it's more effective. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
get that.
My friggin' headset. What other kind of cool stuff did you find when looking into this
I
movie
lost
again?
you. I believe you're muted.
Great. Just a second. Okay. Ken, one more time.
I still don't hear
Okay.
you.
Okay. Oh. Mm. Okay. Can you not hear me? I don't. Can you hear me now? Okay. Like something froze up on my machine. Like Audacity just stopped working, and then I don't know what happened. Yeah. So yeah, let me note that. But yeah, Ken, what was your like? What other cool info? Did you find some cool information about this film?
Yeah, I had that the thing about the CGI, that was like a pretty big one. I thought that was
Yeah.
pretty neat. There is the whole thing, like the hospital itself is laid out really weird. And one of the things that the hospital would not just have laying out is their medication. It doesn't matter like how rural this hospital would be. You're not
Yeah.
going to have narcotics just chilling. Like that's not going to happen.
Well,
Um,
that was a story element though. Like that was why the wife had to go down to the basement to get him. So that was like
yeah.
a little thing that I think was okay. I just think that yeah, the setup was weird though. Like there was a lot of basements for this, and I kind of understand it because like your morgues, they set up like that the morgue and shit was down there, but yeah.
Yeah. This one had I don't think that this budget is right, so I need to double check it because let me double check it because the one that I saw a few different places is so low that it feels like, yeah, okay. $82,000.
Dude, so I'm telling you, like, you can see, like, even if they're like pacing problems and whatnot, you can see that these people went on to make Psycho Goreman because you could see their love of like, I don't know, like how many things you saw when looking into this, but before I ever watched this movie, this movie got compared to The Thing a lot because of all the weird, like, kind of stuff going on. And the practical effects that get into it are very good, and they do a lot. And like, what's funny? I don't know if you thought about this. The first bigger monster that kind of starts attacking him in the hallway, it reminded me of the baby alien monster from Alien Resurrection that gets sucked out the window at the end. That's what it kind of reminded me because of the skull. That doesn't surprise me, Ken, because like I don't know. I never looked into it. I don't know what the budget of Psycho Goreman was, but Psycho Goreman's budget wasn't very high either. It's that, and this movie has that same thing where it's like you just completely see these guys like love of film, and when you have that love of film, it's just like it soaks you. Like you could tell that these people are doing something because they love it. You know what I mean?
The budget for Psycho Goreman was $670,000 US.
So yeah, I mean, you think about it, like they got a bigger budget, but that movie doesn't have a huge budget either. Like, and but they embrace it and they make it like they just like this movie. They just like embrace what they have. I think that this movie does a thing where like that's why a lot of the real like kind of like gross out special effects aren't used all that much, but when they are, they're like they're really good, right? Like for what they look like. I think that when you have that small of a budget too, that like trying to use CGI is a bad idea because you like it's that thing where it's not like fully developed, right? It's like that like thing where it's like you get shitty things like one of my least favorite things in any kind of movie is like the like practical effect like gunshots, or I mean not practical, but the CGI gunshots and like people being shot and stuff like that, and it like goes in and it looks so bad. And it's funny because like the guy who actually played Psycho Goreman before you came onto the podcast, Ken, he did this spin-off movie, and like I was gonna do it on the podcast one week, and Josh wasn't around, and it was so bad that I'm like, I can't do this because it was all that CG guns and CG shots, and I was just like, it's not good. And it's just like, it's why this movie I think is like not perfect. Get me wrong. I mean, Ken talked about the pacing and stuff like that, and that's the thing with like you can agree with this, Ken. Like when you have ADHD as bad as you and I do, when you have weird pacing issues, it can really fuck with us. Like it just like your brain goes, you're not getting the dopamine that you want for a little bit because of like pacing and not know what's happening and all that stuff. And so your brain goes, I'm checking the fuck out. I'm going to go over here and like think about my grocery list for tomorrow or something like that, And it's just like, man, what, like, was there other stuff that you found out when like looking into this that like was interesting though? Like, I mean, besides budget and whatever.
Well, part of the budget was that it was all crowdfunded, which I thought was pretty cool.
That's dope.
Yeah.
Was there anything about this being like, was that hospital like legitimate shut down? Was that a real hospital? It looked like a real hospital.
I did not see anything about that.
It's always like, one of my favorite things about recording these and talking to you is like what the kind of insane shit you find about these films. But like, yeah, it feels like a shut down hospital, right? Which is cool if they got like a abandoned hospital and just let them shoot there for a night or a couple nights, whatever. It probably took about a week to shoot this movie, if even that. When you have $80,000 to shoot a movie like this, you don't have a lot of time either. Like, right? You're on a very, very quick thing. I'm curious on like, it's one of those things where it's like, it feels like someone who was maybe a better, like a little bit more experienced of a director when like would have had more stuff about the doctor. I think that like the doctor kind of like doesn't get the foreground for like a villain in this kind of setup, and like they just kind of go, oh yeah, he his daughter died, and so he basically decided he went out and figured out the Cthulhu arts and then opened up this triangle portal to another world. The other thing with this that I just kind of go, I don't know about, like especially the second time, the amount of motherfuckers running around in this, like on the outside of this hospital to keep them in their the cult outfits, I thought was a little bit like, it seems like a pretty small town. And there was like what, 20 of these motherfuckers? Like there's a good amount of these guys in these capes and stuff like that, or these outfits. Were you like, I wonder if there's too many of these people?
I did kind of wonder that. I did just look at like all these people that he's found were like patients or drug addicts or struggling individuals that were willing to sacrifice themselves,
Yeah.
willingly. So, but yeah, it that part didn't really make a ton
And
of sense.
that was one of the things, especially like I've seen it. The other thing that like, I mean, you kind of learn at the very end of the movie that one of the main characters of the film for like a lot of it is this teenage girl who's pregnant and going into labor, and then at the very end of the movie you figure out that she the doctor fucked her, and you go, she's like, he is such a wonderful man and I am proud to have his child. And it's just like, what the fuck? Dude, it's the weirdest thing with that character, because like she's kind of in the background for so much of the movie, and then she's like, oh no, she's a psychopath, and you go, it doesn't even, it almost looks like a different actress, like when you get into the part where she starts fucking people over, and she like, this bitch slits her own grandpa's throat. She slits
From like,
yeah, you're like,
Yeah.
what the fuck? And all the twisted like you thought it was, I don't know about you. I thought the first time I was watching this, they're setting up that she was setting up the having his daughter or whatever. Nope, that was a new daughter. He was trying to bring his daughter back in the wife or whatever, and there's a weasel, and I see her little black head. I saw a cat on Instagram or something recently, and they had printed out a Batman helmet for a cat and put it on the cat, and the cat was just like sleeping with a Batman helmet on. I'm like, Weasel needs a Batman mask, because aren't there people
like, I'm Batman?
Aren't there people in your community that have 3D printers that could like print a Weasel 3D Batman mask?
Oh, probably. She had wings last year, but she doesn't. She does not want to wear anything because she's a meanie butt. But she had really cute, sparkly wings, bat wings last year.
Oh, she's precious, but in an evil way.
She's so sweet. She shut my stream off 4 times the other day.
I mean, that sounds right. Right. Zelda shut my stream off a couple weeks ago by standing on a power strip.
She stepped on the power button, a reset button. I disabled both of them. She still stepped on the power button. I didn't think to disable the reset button, and she hit that. So now I have I have lids to bottles taped over with duct tape over my power and reset buttons, because even though I've disabled them in my PC, she's still shutting things down.
Weasel, you little shit. You little shit. So because of like, we were talking about the pacing of this film and what it is like, and I think that I was fully like embracing the atmosphere, because I kind of I knew what was happening and kind of like where the movie's gonna go. So I feel like this is one of those films that really is really great for a second watch, even though I'd watched it years ago. You had mentioned that though too, like you were like, maybe I watched it again, and that's a question I have. Like, how is movies like this? Do you often like watch it once and go, maybe if I watch this again, like this stuff will like work and like, better for me, because you kind of get what's happening?
Yeah. There's a lot of movies that I end up having to do that with, because I just check out.
Yeah.
I just check out.
Well, dude, it's like I don't know if you do this like I do this, but like I'm very like I'm very because of my ADHD and it being what it is now, I'm very like I'm okay at this point, like just pausing a film for like 10, 15, 20 seconds to get up, get a drink, go to the bathroom, whatever, because I know that like my brain will bounce off it like and do stuff if like I don't like. And so do you watch like films like this and you're like fully like, okay, I'm doing like kind of doing these little experiences for someone who like as ADHD as you and I both are to experience it and get through them.
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
I'm like do you have you found like ways that you when watching a movie like this that make it easier for you to like get through and like enjoy the experience with like
I mean, sometimes, yeah, if I pause it and like get up and walk around or like whatever, that helps. If I try to like push through a movie that is, kind of slow paced and I'm tired, it never ends well.
yeah.
I definitely recommend like, just getting up, walking around, getting a drink, come back, pause it.
Yeah.
Today, like I said, during that pacing, I was walking, so that helped. But at the same time, I was watching it on Plex, and I was watching one of the like ad ones, and they didn't have subtitles, and it made it difficult to watch and walk. But
yeah, I would be interested if you like went back and like because now that you have that like general feeling of the flow of this film, like I can't believe like I don't get creeped out by movies, and this like the on a second viewing creeped me out, and I was like enjoying like all the stuff because I think I wasn't worrying about the stuff you were. I wasn't worrying about the pacing because I knew where it ends up in the basement and all this stuff, and like I think that this is like it's a weird movie. Like it's like one of those things where it's like the love of film and the love of horror and all this stuff that is like very obvious in when them making this movie. It, especially the first time, doesn't completely like cover up the issues that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. But like the second time, when you those things that are like kind of are easier to shut out, it makes this movie really enjoyable. And like this is I mean you watch those TikToks and like with like horror stuff and all that stuff. This movie has been on lists on YouTube and like all that stuff and like horror stuff for a long time. And like one of those things where I started trying to dive into horror more years before I even did this podcast. And I'm just like, this movie showed up repeatedly. And like, when I finally got a chance to watch it, I'm like, okay, I get it. This movie is like, it's like a love project, right? And it's like the thing where like, you could see that like these people weren't perfect filmmakers, but I feel like that love of like the movies and the love of horror like come through real well in this movie. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would. Yeah. I mean, you can definitely tell that there's a lot of love in it. Definitely tell that there's a lot of like soul poured into it. Yeah, I would agree.
How many minutes is this movie? Like, it wasn't that long, right? It was like...
It was... Oh. Weird. It's normally right there.
Yeah, I'm looking on IMDb myself. I'm like, because it's like, I thought it was like
1 hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah, see, I actually had that thought when I was rewatching this last night. This movie kind of feels like they might have were stretching it to hit 90 minutes, like at points. Mm-hmm. And like, that's what you're talking about, the pacing and stuff like that being a little weird. That was like one of the only issues I had with it, and it was more apparent the second time because I wasn't worrying about the stuff you were worrying about. I feel like it was like, you're like, oh, and weirdly enough, it is exactly 190 minutes. It's an hour and 30 minutes. It is exactly. So that feels very much like, okay, we hit 90 minutes. So we're good, which is that some of the stuff that you talk about pacing and whatnot. And like, I think that there are things that they learned and transitioned into Psycho Gorman where like, I don't know if they were trying to be vague with stuff, like especially like the kid who doesn't have a voice, who ends up being like him and the Asian girl end up being the only survivors of this film. This like the they don't go fully into how he ended up there. I mean, how could you? He can't talk. But it's like it almost felt like the guy who saved him was like the way he talked about this stuff is like, how did you find this house of these weird cult people, like carving up bodies and doing weird shit in the basement?
I think that was, and I could be wrong, but I think that was because his wife was like involved somehow. Wasn't his wife like somehow involved in the cult, and that's how they got there?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I'm because like the movie like really only kind of explains that he went in and did this stuff to save this kid, and because it's one of those things where they kind of imply that the Roland guy from Letterkenny, the drug guy, was like a victim escaping, and then you kind of get flipped on your head, and that's turned into like, no, he's not a victim. He wasn't. But then they flip it again and go, he really got pulled into this thing because he wanted meth. He really wasn't one of the ones doing this shit. And I'm not saying that makes him a good guy, but it's that weird thing where it's like they keep flipping that character, but like they don't explain how this other guy finds him and how like the kid with the no voice gets pulled in, and like, yeah, it was very much there are things of it that it's like, I don't know. I think that like this is one of those films that it's very much like it doesn't excuse it, but I think like you go through those plot. If you don't overthink it, it makes it significantly easier to enjoy, and it makes that thing stuff like where like, yeah, I'm gonna enjoy the atmosphere, because the atmosphere in this movie is fucking fantastic. The special effects are really good, and it's just that thing where like, I mean, you mentioned it earlier that like that's like a Lovecraft like excuse kind of thing, like, oh, you got to make it like this kind of thing, right? So I I'm curious. I am curious at some point if like you go and rewatch this and you go, oh, okay, okay, I get it. But like, I really do like this movie, and I liked it a lot the first time, and I was amazed how much more I liked it the second time. You know what I mean? So, Ken, what would you, as the ADHD superstar that you are over here, what would have made it a little bit easier on a first watch? Just the what would have made it a little bit like smoother for
Honestly, it's not something that it wasn't the movie's fault. I think that subtitles would have helped immensely, and I think that maybe as far as movie goes, maybe a little less time in the dark. Again, I understand atmosphere, I understand all of that, but like a little less time in the dark and a little bit more description.
you? Yeah.
But from an atmospheric state, I get it.
Well, you have to. I mean, and you found out one of the reasons why it's in the dark as much as it is. If it had an $80-something thousand budget, that was why. That's like, I think one of those scenes that I think like perfectly shows what you're talking about was when the doctor's like preaching, like giving that monologue to the woman, and like you just can't see him because it's like they're like showing like him cutting off pieces of his arm or cutting off pieces of his whatever they were doing at that point, and you go, oh, this is one of those perfect examples of like, oh, we don't have the budget to show a whole lot, but man, like even like the tentacle effects in this and like stuff like that, it's an impressive feat of what they did with such a fucking tiny fucking budget, man. Like, I don't know. You or I go like $87,000. That's a lot of money, but like, that's nothing for a movie.
That's nothing for a movie. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because
it's like even what Psycho Gorman is. that movie is what you say 800,000 or whatever, like whatever it was. You go, oh, these people just fucking like they took their shortcomings in that film and they make these like Power Ranger level like characters that are just like that look kind of hokey, but they just completely embrace it. And this movie's kind of like that too. It's just like the I think the creature effects in this are way more gory and scary kind of things, but they're not as good as Psycho Goreman.
Mhm.
But you can see what they learned doing this and transitioning it into Psycho Goreman. Like they didn't try to do like big things like that monster that they use in this. And they were like, okay, we're just gonna do like little things that are just like creepy and like whatever. Like the sword fight at the end of that movie will forever be like, one of my favorite things ever. And like the bad angel priest lady and her like cardboard sword with like a fucking light tube, and it's just like that's the kind of stuff that I think they learned because of this movie, right? Like they tried not to do like really big extravagant things like that, like blobby monster. They just were like, oh, we're gonna do these real like individual small things, but like I'm okay with that because like I think that they nail enough in this movie. You talked about the thing slamming its head on the fucking that's a really cool fucking feature, and they obviously is a puppet or something in a suit or whatever they did with it, and it's just like these guys just go, we're gonna make this movie. We're gonna do it in probably not that many days, and like just we're gonna it, and that's what I love, man. It's just like I think that love and meaning, like we live in a time where like Hollywood is producing these big budget soulless movies. I think of things like the Total Recall remake. I think of the RoboCop remake, even that 2016 Ghostbusters female movie. It's like these movies that don't have soul to them, like they don't have love. They just have this thing where like we want money, and this is I think it's just loving what you're doing and just loving the art and loving what you're like trying to get your audience to enjoy. It just means so much, and it's why horror isn't always the most like extravagant, and like critics don't always love it, but it's that such a art form that like you and I love, and like and the people who really make it and make it well love, and it just that comes across. And when you do that and that comes across, it's just like you feel it and it feels good,
Mhm.
So I don't know. I think that like also with like how busy you've been, Ken, and how like you've been like tired and all, you've had a fucking like a lot of like running around in circles the last few days. I think that probably it wasn't like the most helpful thing, like because you've been doing all this shit and running around and driving across countries and becoming an international spy and getting kicked out of Canada and all the things you've been doing,
Mhm.
But it's that thing where I think that you gave this another watch, and you would probably be like, okay, and it would be like, I watched it on Josh's Plex and it was fine.
Mhm.
So I wonder
It
if
lagged a little on Josh's, so I didn't get to watch it there. So then I started watching it on the Freeplex thing, which was great because at the end there's a scene where the father is shooting the rifle, and right as the bullet comes out and there's like the explosion, the ad starts, and it was just the best timing. I was like, "Oh, the movie's really picking up, but now's an ad time. Thank you so much."
it's like when you're streaming on Twitch and you're like, I'm about to fight this boss. Ads. Ads are, man, you know what? I really wish, because I mean, we're talking about Twitch and all this stuff. Like the thing that I do enjoy, and I wish Twitch would do it more, just like when they shrink the window a little bit and then just wrapper ads. I like those ads because they're not intrusive. They don't stop what you're missing and what you're doing, and you don't miss anything. And it's just like, it's that whole thing where you can't ignore it, and you see what's happening, right? Like I don't know, man. I understand ads need to happen, but like living in 2024, man, it's almost that thing where it's like when I cancel.
Oh no, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say when I canceled cable, it was because of ads. I mean, that's a big thing, right? And yeah.
Well, and that's everybody's always like, "Oh, this is a free pro. This is free. This is free." And then they're like, "Oh, but here's an ad." No, bitch, my time isn't free.
Yeah.
Like, no.
That's one of those things, man. When I've gotten older, like, and I'm not like completely broke anymore, my like, I will pay for things that make my experiences better because, like you said, time fucking matters. I'm finishing up the new Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth game, like I said, and I'm like, I bought the collector's edition, and guess what? It sped the game up a little bit because I got like resources to do shit, and it's just like, hey, time matters, man. Like, you only have so much time on this fucking earth, so like, yeah, I completely agree. Like, your time does matter, and that's why, like, I think the older you get, the more you realize that, right? So, so fuck ads. That's all though.
Yes.
We'll go back to that. Okay, what are your final thoughts? And we'll wrap up, and then we'll figure out what we're doing next week.
I think this is another movie that I definitely need to give another shot down the line.
Yeah.
I don't think it's bad, especially knowing how low the budget was. It does explain why it was so dark all the time because you do get to hide a lot in the dark. I was really hopeful, and I don't think it like let me down. I think it was just a little bit dark. So, yeah.
It's funny because I think about it because a movie I talk about all the time for being dark. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Have you seen the second Alien vs Predator movie, the Requiem
Not
movie?
the second one. Nah.
Dude,
Is it just dark?
There's no movie. It's just darkness for an hour and a half or 2 hours. It is the worst lit movie I've ever seen. It made this movie seem like tropical in the middle of Hawaii at noon on a like July Monday like kind of movie. That's how dark that movie was. It is the hardest watch I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, fuck. So
Bless you.
Thank you. Did you have anything that you were thinking of right now that you would like to watch for next week?
There was something, and now I can't for the life of me remember what it was. Did you have anything you were thinking?
No, I was actually thinking because I was gonna have my buddy Brian was gonna come talk about this with us, but Ken had to move this till tonight, so he didn't get to come do it. Maybe I'll reach out to him and ask him if he has anything he wants to watch.
Yeah,
I can let you know. So, and maybe he'll come back and do it next week because he has Mondays off, so he could do it for sure. So, he's a good dude. He's the one who got me into horror podcasting because he had this show called Dead at Santa Carla that was on the Slashing Cast Network and everything like that. So, yeah, we'll figure that out and we'll just tweet out about it, or we'll just do it. Probably gonna happen because I've been real bad to tweet about the show since Josh left. So, yep. Okay, Ken. Well, I'm glad that you like. I completely get it. I think this movie it's not perfect. I think that the love meant a lot to me, and yeah, and it just means a lot. And the first time I watched it, I'd never seen Psycho Goreman because Psycho Goreman did exist. So, go to murdermoose.com and get some gear, get some Murder Moose gear. Go to continue.com and get her schedule and come follow her stream and all that stuff, and follow me on X and fucking YouTube and all this stuff at Rod_Johnston and do all this stuff. I'm making stuff. Oh, and also I'm now a published author. My book is out.
Yeah.
So I'll even put a link in that. And everyone who's read it after buying it has said really good things. So I'm happy, man. I wasn't expecting the book to sell very much, and it hasn't sold a lot, but like it still means a lot to me that I've gotten to do that and put it out there. And so, yes.
Yeah, I'm buying my copy for here and a copy for back at my parents' house. So
I love you, friend, and I appreciate it. So yes, next week we will do something, and we'll tweet about it or just do something. So, okay, guys, thank you, Ken, for being awesome. I know we're both ready for bed, and we will catch you guys next week. And whatever the fuck we're watching, and we love you, and thanks for watching, listening, and take it easy, okay?
Bye.